Language Teachers Association of India and Siksha Anusandhan to the University of Bhubaneswar to this 107th webinar on a very relevant topic. We have Professor R. Joseph Ponniah from NIT Trichy. He is the resource person for today. Yeah. As you are all aware of the legacy of ELTAI, it has been working for, it has covered a long journey in the field of education for the enrichment of languages, to equip our learners, to equip our students with the skills of listening, speaking, reading, and writing. As you are all aware that these four skills, out of which two are receptive and two are productive, uh, most often you find that reading and listening skills, they are among the neglected ones. So the selection of topic for this webinar is obviously relevant for all of us. Uh, uh, Let me first get you introduced to the legacy of what ELTAI has been doing in the field of teaching community for the teachers, for the students, India and abroad. I'll request my technical team member to show the promo of ELTAI. Thank you for introducing us all in very brief about what ELTAI is and what it is doing, how it is contributing in the field of imparting education, language education, especially. So, considering it, realizing the need for reading, developing the skill of reading among students, because these days what is happening is so much of the visual things are there that we often get distracted with the with the emergence of internet and all that. When mobile phones are there in everyone's hand, people are forgetting about they are not in the habit of reading at all. Okay, and this reading habit is so important that it functions like an input. Unless you provide with an input, you cannot expect for an output. If you want to become a good speaker, you first have to become a good listener. You can take examples of even those, who don't read, but who can speak well. But when it comes to production of information, you will be able to, one is able to produce information only if he had some input. And the input that we gain is in form of listening and reading. So we must inculcate, we must develop this habit of reading skill among our students and among our teaching fraternity as well. Altai has taken an initiative to promote the skill of reading, and it has taken it as a movement, popularly known as reading movement. The movement named as India Reads, it's a venture of Altai. Yeah. Uh, so this is all about how we can make the reading interesting. There is those who are the members of LTI. They can take the privilege of becoming the member of it, establishing the reading clubs at their institutions, and be a part of it and promote this reading skill so that their students can become the good speakers, good listeners, good communicators in overall. It's a scenario. So we will share in detail. You can find the details about this India Reads movement on the ELTAI website. You can visit the website eltai.in. And now is the time to invite our moderator, uh, Dr. Swathi. She is an assistant professor in the Department of English at uh, GITAM University, Visakhapatnam campus. Welcome, Dr. Swathi. It's over to you now. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Manish. Good
Welcome.
evening, everyone. It's an honor to introduce today's esteemed speaker, Professor R. Joseph Ponniah. Dr. R. Joseph Ponniah is a professor of English in the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at NIT Tiruchirappalli. His research concentrates on the interface between language, cognition, and gene in the context of reading and language acquisition. He's authored more than 40 research articles, and most of them are published journal articles are indexed in Scopus, SCI, ESCI, and 10 of his papers appeared in Q1 journals. He has co-edited a book titled The Idea and Practice of Reading, published by the Springer International. He served as a member of the Senate at IIIT Tiruchirappalli between 2017 and 2020. He was the head of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences from 2017 to 2019 at NIT Tiruchirappalli. He's a Board of Studies member of different colleges and universities, including JNTU Hyderabad. He served in different faculty selection committees and academic audit committees of premier institutions. He's organized workshops and faculty development programs for teachers and researchers. And the program, Text and Context in Translation, was in collaboration with National Translation Mission, Mysuru, and Tamil Nadu Textbook and Educational Services Corporation. Mr. Joseph has delivered plenaries, keynotes in different conferences, in addition to his presentations in more than 25 conferences, including conferences in Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Philippines. His research interests include English language teaching, second language acquisition, reading biolinguistics, genetic and neuroscience of language. Professor Joseph, we are delighted to have you with us today. We request you to proceed with your presentation. Over to you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. The topic today I'm going to deliver is factors affecting reading and writing. So I will be discussing some of the factors affecting reading and writing. So in 40 minutes time, I cannot share all the factors that affect reading and writing. So reading is a process where we decode the meaning using the previous knowledge. When we use the previous knowledge, when we read, we use the current knowledge. That is, when reading, we use the current knowledge and we comprehend the meaning. When we read a textbook, the meaning reaches the short-term memory. Then the working memory takes the short-term memory and then takes information, relevant information from the long-term memory and processes the information. So the working memory will manipulate the information and then we get the meaning of the text. So usually in a second language context, learners, when reading, they face a language problem. And for which there are two ways of solving the problem. One is the path of pain, and the other one is the path of pleasure. Path of pain is actually when we read, we are asked to focus on language structures. So if we do not have the required language to communicate the thought, or if we do not have the required language to understand what we read, we will be asked to focus on language structures, and we will be asked to learn language structures, and we will be asked to learn the meaning of words in isolation. So after learning the meaning of words in isolation, then when we read the text, it will be easy for us to understand and the text. That's the one way of improving our reading. The other one is the path of pleasure. Path of pleasure is actually when we read a text, we incidentally acquire meaning of the text. Our subconscious mind will use subconscious mind will acquire the properties of the language used in the text, and we will incidentally acquire all measures of language competence. So when we read a textbook, if we come across an unknown word for the first time, in the first encounter, we will acquire partial meaning of the word. Second encounter, we will add some more meaning to the word. Third time, we will add some more meaning to the word. So we not only acquire the meaning of the word, we are also acquiring the grammar of the word. So if a word is used as a verb, we are acquiring meaning plus the grammar of the word, the particular verb form of the word. If the word is used as an adjective, we are acquiring meaning plus the adjective form of the word. So that's how we incidentally acquire when we read a text. So we do not know that actually we are acquiring a meaning, but the acquisition of meaning happens when we read the text. So we acquire both grammar as well as meaning of words when we read. This is the path of pleasure. So usually the prescription, the path of pain is given more important in the language education system than the path of pain. The reason is human beings are wired to get the immediate result. That is, we think about the immediate gratification of something. When I read, what I have acquired, what I have learned. So we need to quantify what we have learned. So when we learn something consciously, we can easily quantify this exactly that we have learned. But then when we learn anything subconsciously, we cannot quantify the amount of learning immediately, but that is actually the delayed gratification. So if someone smokes a cigarette, people would say that smoking is injurious to health. But humans are interested in smoking. The reason is they get immediate gratification, that is pleasure when they smoke. The delayed implication is the health issues, and no one is worried about the delayed implication or the health issues. We think about the immediate gratification rather than the delayed gratification, and that is the reason why we choose the path of pain rather than the path of pleasure when we learn anything. Similarly, if we want to acquire the reading skills or the properties of the language when you read something, we have to choose the path of pleasure and not the path of pain. So when we learn anything using rules, we assume that we are learning all the rules in isolation, and we are using rules when we read a textbook or when we use the language. But the fact is, rules are very complex in nature. We don't actually learn all the rules discovered by the linguist. A linguist discover rules for certain properties of the language, and then the grammar textbook writers, they don't write all the rules discovered by the linguist in the grammar textbook. The teachers, they don't teach all the rules written in the grammar textbook. And the learners, we won't learn all the rules taught by the teacher, and then we will not apply the rules, the learned rules. So these are the problems that we have when learning rules of grammar. After learning some rules, we assume that we are using consciously learned grammar knowledge when reading and writing. This is the assumption. And most of the time, the rules are misstated in grammar textbooks. When textbook writers, when they try to simplify rules, they misstate rules. For example, John, Stephen, and Jessica are reading. The grammar textbook says singular pronoun is used to refer to singular noun, and the plural pronoun is used to refer to plural noun. When we read the sentence, John, Stephen, and Jessica, we have three singular nouns, and the writer are in the grammar book, and we are not explained that we have to use all the three nouns as plural, and we have to use it. So if you are obeying the rule, and if you are changing the sentence, we have to rewrite the sentence as he, and she are reading. But then our common sense will not allow you to rewrite the sentences he, and she are reading. We will rewrite the sentences they are reading if we are asked to substitute pronoun in the place of noun. Okay, so we are actually using subconsciously acquired grammar knowledge. We acquire grammar knowledge through reading and listening, and we use those rules, and then we assume that we are using consciously learned grammar knowledge when reading and writing. So this is about the language problem. And if we continue to focus on language structures when reading, it will be very difficult for us to decode the meaning from the text. So human beings are wired to focus on meaning when reading, and we are not wired to focus on language structures when reading. When we read something in our mother tongue, do we focus on language structures? Certainly not. We will be immersed into the content or the meaning conveyed in the text. Once we immerse into the meaning contained in the text, and we will subconsciously use uh, the language properties, or we will subconsciously acquire language properties. And this is how we language when we read. So when we are naturally wired to focus on meaning when doing anything or when reading, we have to focus only on the meaning. If you are focusing on the meaning when if you focus on the language structures when we read, and that might sometimes distort the learning system itself. So we have intensive reading method. When we are asked to read a textbook intensively, generally in the language classroom, instead of intensively focusing on the meaning of the text, we will be intensively asked to focus on the language structures. Once we focus on the language structures, and they will ask us to discover rules of grammar or discover unknown words. So once we discover unknown words or rules, and they will ask us to identify to learn the meaning of the words, and then they will ask us to know the language rules involved in that particular sentence, and then we will be learning grammar rules and words, and then they will ask us to apply those rules when reading and writing. This is against the natural way of doing anything. If we are doing anything against the natural method, and that might distort the learning system itself. Then reading is a pleasurable exercise. Light reading is a pleasurable exercise, but then light reading is not a pleasurable exercise for all the learners. Those who have habit of reading in English, they will continue to read. And the students who do not have the habit of reading, they will say that reading itself is a boring exercise. Reading itself is a boring exercise. So if reading is not an interesting activity, we have to find some means to make the reading process pleasurable. Unless and until we make the learning process or the reading process pleasurable, and then we cannot continue to do that activity forever. And a writer says, if an activity doesn't have pleasure in it, and the activity will terminate at one point of time, so we cannot continue that activity. So for which we have to make the reading process pleasurable. How can we make the reading process pleasurable? So whenever readers would say that actually those who have a habit of reading, they will find time to read. And the non-readers, they will complain that they do not have time to read. So that's the difference between the readers and non-readers. So if you want to make the readers reading more pleasurable, then we have to develop a habit of reading. How can we develop a habit of reading? So if you are interested in a particular topic, if you select some articles on that particular topic, and if we continue to read articles on that, that might motivate some students or some learners to read. If they are not actually interested in even reading on the topic of interest, then we have to somehow develop the habit, and for which we need to begin with reading for about 5 minutes a day. If you read for 5 minutes daily, 5 minutes is not a great deal for us. So we can spend around 5 minutes in reading daily. Once we spend 5 minutes for about a week, then later we can increase the time to 10 minutes. And then for about 1 week or 10 days, we can read for about 10 minutes. Then there can be increase the time by 10-15 minutes, then 20 minutes. So if you increase the time like that, then you will complete a textbook in 2 or 3 months, or sometimes it might take 6 months. If it is a short story book, you can complete that in 3-4 months time. So once you complete a text, once you have a reading experience, and you will be sharing your reading experience with other people, you will be sharing the content that you read with other people. Once you share your experience and the reading content with others, if others are actually appreciating your the content that you are sharing, or if others are actually appreciating the reading experience that you had, then that in fact will motivate you to read further, because that gives a kind of reward. Once you get a reward, and human beings are a reward creatures. So once we get reward from doing an activity, that in fact will motivate us to read. And this is how we need to slowly develop the habit of reading. And then once we get positive feedback from other people, and that in fact will motivate us to read, then we need to create um, uh, uh, um, we need to have a desire to, every individual will have the desire to solve problem. um, um, you are attending this program because you want to know more about reading and writing. So that exactly is the problem that we have in our mind. If we are given some solution, suggestions as to how to develop reading and writing, and we will try that as a trial and error method. So every individual has an intention to improve the language, or has an intention to read and write better. So far we tried some methods in reading and writing, but we found that to be unsuccessful. But in a program, a speaker is giving you some suggestions as to how to develop the habit of reading, or how to develop reading and how to write better. So once some suggestions are given, and if we try, if we use the suggestions in our when reading and writing, sometimes the brain will use that as a trial and error method, and will use those the suggestions given by the speaker. If you feel that the suggestions works well, the suggestion worked well, then that in fact will motivate you to read further. So that's a reward system. So you have a problem in your mind, and you are using trial and error method to approach or to solve the problem. So if a method works well, and then you will start to read further. So this is actually your behavior about reading will change. Then this is about the language issue. So once we have language issue, we are supposed to read further. Once we read, and we will acquire all measures of language competence subconsciously. And this is explained by Dr. Stephen Krashen in the input hypothesis. So once we receive this one input, we will acquire a language. I is actually the current language level of an individual, plus 1 is the next level. So when you read a textbook, if you come across one or two unknown word, you will subconsciously fix the meaning of those unknown word using the current knowledge. And then later this unknown word will become I, and then you will move to the next level. And that's how we slowly acquire language incidentally. Okay, this is how we have to solve the language issue. Then the next issue is the cognitive issue. So cognitive issue is actually we read something, the content, the meaning reaches the short-term memory, and then from the long-term memory, the working memory will retrieve information. The working memory will process the information taken from both the short-term as well as the long-term memory. The working memory will manipulate the information and will process the information. And that's how we infer, or we get the meaning of a particular textbook. So after reading a particular textbook, we feel that so we have not understood the text properly, or if you feel that you have not understood the deeper level meaning of the text, in that case, we need to get opinion from the other people, or feedback from others. So once we read something, we arrive at a meaning, we comprehend the text, and then we arrive at a meaning. When we share the information with other people, if your friends and your colleagues are appreciating your ideas, which means your cognition is in place. You don't have any problem in comprehending the text. But every time when you share your opinion with others, and your colleagues say that you have some problem in getting the deeper level meaning of the text, or you have misunderstood the meaning contained in the text, and you need to reread the text again. So if you have such a kind of feedback from your colleagues, which means you have some issues with the comprehension or with the cognition, in that case, once you get feedback from your colleagues and from your teachers, and that feedback will really help you to shape the thought process. Once the thought process is shaped, again, if you read the textbook, and you will get the meaning of the text correctly. And that's how we need to improve the comprehension when reading a textbook. If you do not have any comprehension issue when reading, and if others are appreciating your views when you share with others, that in that case your cognition is in place, you need not to worry about it. And then once you continue to read a particular text or kind of text, and if your brain will sense that, and you need this kind of skill, and in that case your brain will use the unused cognition and will compensate for reading. So once the brain started using the unused cognition, and once the brain compensates for reading, you will easily understand the text. So you may need your friend might be understanding the text in the first read, and you might need 2 or 3 reads for understanding the particular text. And there is always inter-individual differences in comprehending a particular text. Okay, so this is how we need to address the cognitive issue. Then after reading the text, you have the idea, you have comprehended the text, but then when reading, readers will subconsciously acquire some strategies. Some readers will skip some paragraphs, and then they will continue to read. So the meaning is, they know well that what the author is going to convey in the next few paragraphs. So they might feel those content redundant. In that case, they will skip the paragraphs, and then they will move to the next page. So if that is actually a kind of reading strategist. When you acquire more knowledge on a particular field, when you acquire more knowledge on the particular discipline, and you will develop such a kind of strategies. So you read and comprehend the text. Then the meaning is processed subconsciously. You pick up the knowledge subconsciously when you read. So once you read, when you acquire knowledge subconsciously, you make some conscious effort, and then the subconscious mind has a major role in picking up the meaning of the text. Then if you feel that there is some misunderstanding in your understanding, or if you don't get the idea properly, or some issues in the comprehension, so this is the second solution for addressing the problem. If you feel that there is problem in comprehending the idea, you can make the whole subconscious process conscious. You might have heard about the term metacognitive awareness. So make the subconscious process conscious. How you have processed the idea. Think about how the subconscious mind has processed the idea. Then if there is any gaps in the comprehension, try to identify what exactly is the gap. So once you started thinking about the subconscious process, then in that case, you can address the issue. If you were not in a position to address the issue, you can again get feedback from other people. So this is how you can address the cognitive issues, if you have any cognitive issues when reading. Then there is another issue, cognitive bias. Cognitive bias is actually, there are some people who have difficulties in recognizing one's own incompetence in understanding a text. So if you have incompetence in understanding the text, in that case, again, we need to go for the feedback. And such people will have sometimes inflated self-assessments. So we are not supposed to have the inflated self-assessment. We are not supposed to have a kind of ego when we share knowledge with other people. So read. If you have any issues, get feedback from your teachers or your colleagues, and that in fact will really help you to read better. And about the writing is writing creates a kind of anxiety to most of the learners. Generally, writing on the test is treated as academic writing, but that is not the academic writing. When you write something, you should experience, you are actually composing the idea. When you compose the idea, you may not know that what idea that you're going to write in the next sentence, or what sentence that you're going to write next. So a musician composes the music. Similarly, writers compose the idea when writing, and writing is a kind of composing process. And this kind of experience you might feel when you write an academic article, research paper, or when you write book chapter. So when we write book chapter or a research article, or when we are doing some academic reading, academic writing, if we do not have the habit of writing, then mostly learners or writers would say that, novice writers would say that I am waiting for the motivation to happen. If we wait for motivation, then motivation never will happen. So if you want to write anything on a topic, we are supposed to involve in the topic. We are supposed to involve in the topic, immerse ourselves in the topic. First, we need to involve in the topic, and then we should get motivated. So initially, we might have a feel that we have the language problem, as in the case with reading. So once we have the language problem, again, if you're writing on a particular area, in that case, you need to read more on that particular specific area. Once you read more on the specific area, you will acquire the similar kind of words, syntax used in the field, and you will subconsciously acquire those words and structures when you read, and you will be using the similar kind of words and structures when you write something. So this we acquire knowledge incidentally by reading, and then when we start to read, and we have to first involve in doing writing, and then we should get motivated. So if you're writing a research paper, then if you just start to write without reading anything, so you will be using only the previous knowledge that you had on the topic, even if you do not have the previous knowledge on the topic, and you will be just writing the felt meaning or felt ideas you had in the field, and that will not have any support at all. So first, what you have to do is you have to collect some material. So we need to collect some material. So we need to first get involved in the topic, and then collect information on the particular topic. After collecting information, you should be the avid collector of the details, facts, and other material, or details and facts. Once you collect the materials and and that has more details and facts on the particular topic that you are going to write, and that in fact will really motivate you to write. So if you do not have any ideas in your hand or any material in your hand, that will not really motivate you to write. So you collect the information. After collecting the information, you are supposed to go for pre-writing. So if we do not have the patience in doing pre-writing, and we cannot become a better writer. Robert Boyce says that, so he conducted writing programs for many writers, and he says that most of his participants, the dropout participants from the programs, they have the combination of impatience and self-esteem. So generally, when we plan to write on a particular topic, without collecting information, without having more knowledge on the particular topic, we just start to write. Once we start to write out of impatience, then you won't get the idea. Mind will resist to come up with ideas. Once the mind resists to come up with new ideas, you will have impatience, and then you will stop writing, and you will have low self-esteem. So this is not the right way of doing. You have to go for pre-writing. You should have clarity in your mind on what point, or what aspect that you are going to write. So identify the background of the topic, the research gap in the topic, and then finalize your objective. Once you finalize the objective, if you want to identify the research gap and the objective, for which you have to read at least 5, 10 or 15 articles. Only then you can identify the actual research gap in the field. When reading, you will get an idea how writers have packed the ideas in the particular discipline. So once you get that idea, and that will give you a clarity as to how to go for a pre-writing. So do pre-writing. So we will be spending around, if you are writing an academic article, this pre-writing might take around 1 or 2 months time. Some people will be impatient in completing the pre-writing in 3 or 4 days time. So we cannot complete the pre-writing in 3 or 4 days time. Pre-writing is the actual design of the article that we are writing. So if you want to get the actual design of the article, you should have the overall understanding of the article that you're going to write. So to have overall understanding or understanding about the article, you have to read substantially on the particular topic. Without reading that, you cannot have the overall understanding about the topic. So once you identify the research gap and the objective, so you can write the introduction, then that will align with your objective and the research gap, and then you can develop the idea. And this is how we have to start to write. So when we write, after having the design, we start to write on the topic. Once we write on the topic, we might sometimes deviate from the original design to some extent. For example, for instance, 20 or 30% you might deviate. So you can deviate from the original design to 20 to 30%. So if you're deviating, the indication is that you are growing. The indication is that you are growing. So that's how we write. So that we experience the composing process. So if when writing on the topic, if you have any problem getting newer ideas, you can give a break. You can give a break, and the break is actually the incubation period. You incubate new ideas. You incubate new ideas. So once we give a break, and that will really help us to come up with a new idea. So in the meanwhile, you are not actually taking a break. Your subconscious mind will synthesize the idea, combine one idea with the other idea, and then connect one idea with the other idea. So this happens subconsciously. When the process happens subconsciously over a period of time, when you are taking that incubation or a break, when you are taking the break, and that in fact will really help you to generate new knowledge when you write again. So that kind of writing experience you should have. So when you write, if you do not have clarity on a particular topic, then you have to experience the reciprocal relationship between reading and writing. You write something, you feel that you don't have clarity on the topic, then you get back to reading. Read something on the topic, and then get back to writing. So after getting clarity, you get back to writing. So such a kind of reciprocal relationship between reading and writing. We need to experience a reciprocal relationship between reading and writing. So this is how we need to write an academic article. Then the writing is actually, we have two phases of writing. One is the creative phase, and the other one is a critical phase. So initially, when we write on the topic, we should be more creative, and we are not supposed to be critical about our own ideas. We are not supposed to be critical about our own ideas. Once you criticize your own idea, then you cannot be creative on that field. So write whatever comes to you. After writing on the topic, then go for the revision second draft of the article. When you write the second draft of the article, you can give importance to the creativity, not the critical aspects. Generate more ideas. Generate more ideas. When you generate more ideas, then after writing 2 or 3 drafts, then you can be critical about your own ideas. Then you can be critical about your own ideas. So later you can be once you are critical about your idea, you are eliminating unwanted or unnecessary points, and then you are giving shape to the article. Then later you are going for the copy editing stage, that is proofreading stage. But then when you write that article, you read some articles by other writers. Generally, research scholars have the tendency to bring in those ideas into their writing when they read that article. So we are not supposed to read others articles with an intention to bring those ideas into our articles. You read that, then think about the relevance of your write-up to with the other and the writer's article. Manipulate the idea, process the idea, manipulate the idea, convert that into your own, then bring that idea into your own. Only then that will fit into your own narration. Then after that, you can cite the author. After that, you can cite the author. So when you bring in others' ideas into our article, that should not distort the writing process, and for which we have to bring in the felt dimensions of the meaning. Felt meaning, we have to write the felt meaning when writing when bringing the others ideas. So we need to bring in the felt dimensions of the meaning when you bring in others ideas, or even when you generate your own knowledge. You have to express your felt experience. So you are not supposed to just connect theories and bring in those theories without having any connection to your own experience. So bring in the felt dimensions of the meaning when you write on the topic. When you bring in the felt dimensions of the meaning when you write on the topic, which means that will have originality. That will have originality. So then when writing, we should not have the intention to look at the meaning of words immediately. You write something, you feel that this particular word is inappropriate. If you feel, then once immediately that will prompt us to look at the dictionary. So if you're looking at the dictionary and you will to use the word used in the dictionary, and you will replacing the word that you have generated when writing. When you are actually writing a particular word, and the word has a kind of felt meaning in it. The word has a kind of felt meaning in it. So the word will have a kind of string of connections with the other words. The word will have string of connections with the other words. When you remove the word from the context, the entire meaning will be lost. The entire meaning will be lost. You are removing the word and then you are inserting the word that you have selected from a dictionary or any textbook. That means that you are removing the felt meaning of felt meaning, and then when you remove that word, and the entire meaning will be lost because the word has connections with the rest of the words. So if you feel that the word is inappropriate, retain the word, don't delete anything. So when you go for the second draft, think about that. Once you think about that, something will strike you, oh, this would be the right word. So once you generate the right word when you go for the revision, that will strengthen the meaning of the text that you are, or the content that you are writing. So such a kind of writing experience that you should have when writing an academic article. Then next is we always think about the quality. So once when we compose the idea, we always think about the quality. So quality, and there are two ways of looking at the quality. One is path of going for genuinely high quality, and the other one is fighting the badness. This I have already explained. And another one is fighting the badness. So we are tempted to fight the badness. So when we write something, when we come across inappropriate expression, immediately we remove that and then we insert a phrase that will fit to that context. So we don't give importance to the composing experience. So always we fight against the badness. When we fight against the badness, we remove the composed idea, then we will find it difficult to generate new ideas. So in that case, you write whatever comes to you. And this is actually called free writing. So write whatever that comes to you. So write 4 or 5 pages. Then from that 4 or 5 pages, you can identify 2 or 3 more important, you can identify a few important ideas. Then you can delete the rest of the pages. So the wonderful ideas will be buried inside when you are involved in free writing. So such a kind of writing experience we should have, and we are not supposed to remove the badness immediately after we pen down the idea. That will in fact distort the writing process. You will lose the ideas that you have already composed. Then we have to go for more revision. Generally, scholars, research scholars, after writing the first draft, they will go for the language editing, and then they will try to submit that as the article to a journal. The reason is, when writing the first draft, they make an attempt to write it correctly. And in the course of writing it, making an attempt to write it correctly in the first instance, they lose their ideas. And at the same time, there won't be any quality in that. There will be shallow idea. When they submit that to a journal, immediately the editor will reject the idea. So we should not have a kind of impatience in writing the research paper. So you can fix for writing a research paper. I will be taking around, if it is the first paper, it might take at least 1 year to write the paper. If you have already written 6 or 7 papers, and it might take 6 months to write, at least 6 months to write the paper. So you have a schedule for about 6 months from the day one, what I will be writing. So we actually, instead of having, if you are given a 6 months time, instead of spending 6 months time in composing the idea, writing on the particular topic, when the deadline comes, they will write before the deadline. They will write before the deadline. On the 6th month, they will start to write on the topic. Even the PG students, if they are given the assignment, they will be given 2-3 months for writing the assignment, but then they won't spend 3 months in writing the assignment. On the last day or 2 days before, they will write something, they will read something, they will summarize the ideas given by other writers, and then they will bring in those ideas and they will write some nonsense and they will submit. And if you develop the habit of writing like this, and you cannot improve the writing quality, from the day one, you have to spend some time in writing. You have to do writing regularly. When you spend around half an hour on reading and writing from day one, even if you might be giving some break in between. So once you gain some knowledge initially, your subconscious mind will start to process the idea that you have read from some textbook. Then after a short break, if you start to write, then you will come up with some quality idea. So if you are spending around 6 months consistently or regularly on writing on a particular topic, your writing quality will certainly improve. But then we do not have that kind of practice. As I said, we need to develop the habit of writing. So initially you can write for about 10 minutes a day. For 1 week, you can spend 10 minutes a day. And after the next week, you can spend around 20 minutes a day. Then next month, 30 minutes a day. Then you can spend 1 hour a day after 2-3 months. You will feel more comfortable. So if you try to write 1 hour a day initially, you will try to procrastinate writing, saying that I have some other important work, and then you will stop writing. Then before the deadline, if you write on the topic, you will write with the breakneck speed, and then you won't be happy with the kind of writing that you have done. The reason is, you cannot come up with quality writing when you try to write in a short span of time. If a research paper requires 6 months, you have to spend 6 months in writing on the topic. If an assignment requires 1 month time to write, and then you have to spend 1 month in writing on the topic, only then your writing quality will improve. Otherwise, your writing quality will not improve. And then after completing writing, composing the idea, you use the creative mind, and then you have to go for revision. And some writers say that we need to 20 to 30% of the time is spent on writing something, and the remaining 80 to 70% of the time is spent on revising the work. When revising, we will come up with quality ideas. So this kind of writing experience we should have. So if initially you need to read more to gain more knowledge on the topic. Once you feel that you have gained more knowledge on the topic, you get back to writing. When writing, don't try to write it correctly in the first draft. So write whatever that comes to you. Have a pre-writing, design in your hand. Based on the pre-writing, you write something. Then when writing, you will be deviating from the design. If you are deviating from the design, which means you are growing, then write regularly on the topic. Spend around, if you are writing a research paper, spend around at least 6 months in writing on the topic, and that will help you to come up with quality ideas. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That was a wonderful session on factors affecting reading and writing, bringing in the cognitive aspects and strategies adopted by readers. It was a delight listening to you. And you also mentioned the phases of writing and the reciprocal relationship that needs to be experienced between reading and writing. Thank you very much, sir. Sir, with your permission, I'd like to read a few questions that are posted in the chat.
Yes, madam.
Shall I, sir? Yes.
Yes, madam.
Dr. Neera Corner has asked, what are the kinds of texts that might be chosen to encourage reading?
So that depends on the taste of the individual. If you have your scholars in your mind, you need to think about the text in that particular field. If they are MA students, we need to think about the text that will really help them to read. So anyhow, if we want to make children read, and the reading and the text that we choose must be interesting, and at the same time, and they should comprehend the text. So when reading the text, they are not supposed to, if they feel like using dictionary most of the time, which means the text is giving incomprehensible input to you. So in that case, they have to choose a text that they could comprehend.
Absolutely, sir. Yes. Thank you very much. One more question from Professor Ramani. Should we teach reading and writing separately as skills, or focus on their macro skills for effective development of these abilities?
Reading and writing can be taught separately, but they are actually intertwined. And as you said, the children have to experience, when we teach writing, they have to experience the reciprocal relationship between reading and writing. The reason is, writing is treated as summarizing something. Summarizing something and writing on the topic is treated as academic writing by our students.
Yes.
Once we assign some reading to the children, if they are reading 4 or 5 articles or articles on the particular topic, then after reading those articles, if we ask them to write on the topic, their brain will automatically connect ideas contained in all the 5 articles. They will start to synthesize the idea then that will prompt them to generate their own ideas. So this reading and writing has these two have to be intertwined, and then they should experience the reciprocal relationship between reading and writing. To begin with, they can read, and then later when they start to write, they have to include both reading and writing.
Right, sir. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And there's one more question by Srimar Nandi. In the post-pandemic period, students have stopped the habit of reading. What are the ways in which we can inculcate the reading habit among students?
And that's why I said reading is, if reading is not a pleasurable exercise for the children, it will be very difficult for us to
Yes.
motivate them to read. The first thing that we can do is we can identify some of the texts that the children will be interested. If they are interested in sports, we can identify some texts that on sports, and then we can ask them to read. If they are interested in romance, even we can ask them to read some novels on that. Generally, in language classes, the problem in language classes in India is when we ask our children to read novels in technical or in the engineering colleges or in any language classes, in most of the places, and there is a tendency that we are wasting our time. And we are wasting our time. So in that case, I lost your question, it seems, madam. Please repeat.
In the post-pandemic period, students have stopped the habit of reading. What are the ways in which we can
Yes.
inculcate the
Yeah,
reading?
yeah. Not only post-pandemic, even before post-pandemic, and the students have had the same problem. But after post-pandemic, and the problem becomes very serious. Even in the class, and when we ask children to read on a particular topic, and then they will pretend that they are reading, but they won't read, and for which we need to give some kind of reward in making them read something. And initially we have to, as I said, we should not burden them by making them read a lot. So make them read for about 10 minutes a day. Then they will find reading more pleasurable over a period of time. And then make that increase the 10 minutes to 20 minutes, 20 minutes to 30 minutes. And out of 30 or 40 students in a class, at least 20 students will pick up the reading if we make reading a pleasurable exercise.
Yes, very true. Thank you so much. So, due to paucity of time, I'll stick to just one final question here. There's a question by Sarita. Sir, could you please share a theory that can be suggestive for artificial intelligence-based English reading and writing?
Artificial intelligence?
Could you please share a theory that can be suggestive for artificial intelligence-based English reading and writing?
I have no expertise in artificial intelligence. I have no idea about artificial intelligence.
Right.
The text on artificial intelligence.
Yeah, right. I mean, she would like to know probably what theory can relate to that particular artificial intelligence-based reading and writing aspect.
Even machine language, usually they use the theories of Chomsky.
Huh.
You can make use of that. And Chomsky's ideas really inspired the people who are working on machine language. So they can begin with Chomsky's theories.
Right, sir. So thank you very much. Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure interacting with you. Now I hand over the session to Dr. Manish, the host for the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Swathi. Thank you, sir, for this informative and interesting session. For the participants, I have shared the link for the registration for ELTAI Webinar 108 in the chat box. Please go through that and register yourself. For certificates as well, links are provided in the chat box. Please go through that. And let me share with you the poster for our next webinar, webinar 108, with you. Yes. The topic for the next webinar is translanguaging, language proficiency for Indian learners. Dr. G. Bhaskaran, Professor and Dean, School of English and Foreign Languages, Gandhigram Rural Institute, Tamil Nadu, is the resource person for that. As you are all aware, every year ELTAI organizes its annual international conference. This time, the conference is going to be organized going to be held at Uttaranchal University, Dehradun. I hope you are working in that direction as well, writing your abstracts and papers for that as well. Let me share the a poster for that as well. So you are all welcome to our 17th International and 53rd Annual International Conference of ELTAI on Indian ELT. And the topic for this year is English for Global Citizenship, Multiple Teaching Acts and Learning Experiences. The conference will be held from to 14th of October 2023, and it is going to be hosted by School of Liberal Arts, Uttaranchal University, Dehradun, Uttarakhand. Once again, you are all welcome to that. In the meantime, once again, please go through the chat box. The link for certificates that is provided there. Link to register for our next webinar that is also presented there. Please see that you fill in that and submit it on time. At the end, let me formally thank Professor Joseph Ponniah for taking his time to share his valuable opinions related to reading and writing, how we can improve ourselves. Let me also take the privilege of mm, uh, thanking Dr. Swathi, who throughout the webinar could take care of your questions and could place it in an effective manner to Dr. Ponniah. Uh, my thanks also go to ELTAI officers who have been trying very hard to improve, the status of language teaching, the state of language teaching throughout the country. The technical team members and the participants throughout the country who have been there throughout the webinar. Let me welcome you all as well. Let me thank you all as well. Thank you. See you during our next webinar the next month.
Okay.
See you again there.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Joseph, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joseph, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Rashmita, the feedback link is in the chat box. You can find it there in the chat.